Let's go ahead and kind of gather in because we've perfectly orchestrated this to get some Lewis and Clark weather. And we want it to have, timing is everything, so we'll let Mark go ahead and we'll get you going and get you out of here as soon as we can.
That's right, we have a short window of time here before it really starts raining. I want to thank you all for coming out here and helping us dedicate this really special project. My name's Mark Johnson, and I'm the Oregon chapter president of the Lewis and Clark Trail Heritage Foundation. And several of our members and officers are here today. But first of all, I want to thank, in particular, our partners with the Astoria Parks and Recreation. Jonah and his team did an excellent job.
We gotta applaud right now, because I'll tell you what, above and beyond the call of duty, Angela and your crew, above and beyond.
Yes. The Astoria City Council, our Chamber of Commerce was another partner, as well as the Tongue Point Job Corps team that did the masonry work. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Jonah, how much concrete did they put in here? I saw a pile of the bags, and it was
3,500 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
46 bags.
And no dugout canoes to have to haul them in.
Yeah, they did all the real hard work, right?
Right.
Okay.
So this is where to come in an earthquake, right?
Right. Right.
There you go. Everybody stands right here.
That's right.
Yeah. Diane Collier is here on behalf of the Clatsop Nehalem Tribe Travel Council, and they were very helpful with some of the wording and helped us with this. Also, the Lewis and Clark National Park Association. Debbie Wilson was very supportive of our efforts. Thank you. The National Park Service, of course, was involved in helping us figure out the orientation and sites. And a little briefly, I'll just tell you kind of how we came up with this plan. During the bicentennial of Lewis and Clark, we did an inventory of all the sites that had been interpreted and improved, and one of the things that was on our list to inventory was Tongue Point, but there really wasn't any interpretation here, and so myself and Tom and some others were really interested in getting a part of that story told, because they stayed here from November 27th until December 5th, a total of 10 days, and where else across the United States did Lewis and Clark stay for more than a day or two that doesn't have signage or an interpretive center or something like that? So I'll actually let Tom talk a little bit more about the history. Tom and I started looking at sites, and then through some fortuitous meetings with Bruce Jones and others.
Yeah, there's another one we want to thank. Bruce, Captain Bruce Jones, who Coast Guard, yes, retired sector commander, really got us going on this. Really helped us get going. Those of you who were with Bruce when we were actually on the site out there, and greatly appreciate the inspiration there.
Happy to do it.
Yeah. So, Tom, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the history here and some of the stories that happened during those days.
Bill, what do we got? About 10 minutes, right? Yeah. I won't make it that long, because we could talk for days about the history here. I was fascinated. Mark and I, the expedition left here and came by here March 23rd, 1806. In April of 1806, Mark and I wanted to come out and investigate this. It's been almost that long.
Yeah.
But really, this has a rich history here that even I wasn't aware. I taught school for nearly 30 years right around the corner here at Astor Elementary School, and have lived here and knew the appreciation and the beauty of Tongue Point. We are in the land of the Clatsop, right here. And it's so great to have Diane Collier here with us and not sharing her nice cedar basket hat with us. But I know better. So Diane, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was a special place for the Clatsop, the Cathlamet, who lived on the other side, Cathlamet Bay. And there was a group that actually lived around here, talking with Dick and Diane. We're not even sure of their name. they've been assimilated. They assimilated into the Clatsop, the Chinooks, the Wakakim, the Cathlammets who lived here. This was geographically not a wall border, but this was sort of the eastern border of the Clatsop and these people. This was known before Lewis and Clark got here as at least two different names. 1792, October 1792, Captain George Vancouver and his Lieutenant Broughton comes, and they head up, and they name this Tongue Point, but it already had a name, and I'm going to butcher it. I've already apologized to Diane. The closest we can come, and Nick Bash also apologizes for not being here, Sikomitsiak. Butcher. So this was a special, it was a fishing place, Cathlamet Bay. It was a hunting of waterfowl and such on the other side there. So it had at least two other names before the expedition got here. And as Mark said, December 27th, they had, so let's, a real quick background. Some of you have been across the river already, but they're coming down, they're stuck over at Dismal Niche right over here. They finally make it around Point Ellis, decide to come up because they had not shot an elk. They're looking for game to subsist, having to rely on the natives to purchase food and such. So they head way back up, and they stay right here for 10 days, November 27th to December 7th. That's Meriwether Lewis. Chris, how are you? Good to see you, old friend. Squirrel, right? As Meriwether Lewis seeks and finds the eventual site of what's now Fort Clatsop. So it's a significant site, and I'll tell you what, they probably would have welcomed a day like this. You see adjectives spew out of William Clark onto the page. Oh, how horrible! And our panel here, I won't go into them all. This is our present situation, truly disagreeable. This roaring has continued ever since our arrival in the neighborhood of the seacoast, which has been 24 days since we arrived in sight of the great western, for I cannot say Pacific, Ocean, as I have not yet seen one Pacific day since my arrival in its vicinity. I love that quote. Joseph Field, finally, this is the first spot west of the Rocky Mountains that they kill an elk, which was the reason they crossed. And so you can imagine their spirits. The decision that they have made to cross is looking pretty good here, despite the weather. Well, a few years after the expedition leaves that spring of 1806, Fort Astoria is built right within sight of here, later taken over by the British and renamed Fort George. Now, one thing I found in this really fun, fascinating research is the British, in the winter of 1814, starting in February, had started clearing Tongue Point. This was to be the British stronghold of the West Coast. They had actually cleared that off, had planted potatoes. This is in 1814. They had ordered large gun emplacements to be put around there to protect the mouth and seal the deal for the British Empire. Well, that little chess match we had with the British once again, called the War of 1812, ended in our favor. And illness and lack of food, of course, pushed the Northwest Company out. But it was to be the fort at Tongue Point. Now later, we get Bruce, Captain Jones' story into this. The Coast Guard presence here goes way back in the military. The Lewis and Clark expedition being a military expedition as well. But we're revisited by the military. Bruce and I were talking, and another thing I didn't realize, there was a lighthouse out here. And I didn't know that. Bruce, I had it here, 1876. And Bruce was saying the Coast Guard present, early 1900s. Congress authorized this in I got it here someplace, 1919, to approve it for submarine and destroyer base. 1919, submarine base. And then later to be an amphibious seaplane.
Yeah.
Port, correct, Bruce?
Yeah, seaplane base in World War II, and then a place to outfit Navy ships as well.
So what was the obstacles of a seaplane? Now, Captain Jones right now flies the pilots, one of the helicopters that brings the bar pilots out. This gentleman knows the weather around here very well. So what would have been an obstacle, Bruce, for...
Actually, the reason they didn't keep it as a seaplane base is because there's too many logs floating in the river, taking off and landing in the for sure. It's a little dangerous.
Can you imagine how hazardous that would have been?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what a history. 1939, groundbreaking for the naval base. On the other side, they began dredging Cathlamet Bay and filling it in. And it's getting close. I'm almost done. Now, from 1940, of course, it was a naval base. World War I, World War II, various different operations went on out there. U.S. Navy base from 1946 to 1962 stored as many as 250 mothballed Liberty ships there. Do any of you remember the Tongue Point? Diane, do you remember all the?
My son was born there.
Your son was born there. Does anybody else have a?
I remember seeing those ships. It was quite an impressive sight.
Diane, were you here when John F. Kennedy came? That was a big deal.
That was a big deal.
What a sight. What an amazing, amazing history right here. Also, in the early 1900s, this area right here was built as the largest and finest lumber mill in the world. The Tongue Point Lumber Mill was right here, named after Tongue Point. Now, I don't know, how you could actually correct if it was the largest, but it was built. It was quite large when the lumber industry really took on. Well, then of course on the other side, where the naval base was, in 1965, one of the very first Job Corps Center in our nation opened its doors, and is still operating at Tongue Point with some of the fine young men and women there that help in the community. And the education going on right now out there is great. And the Coast Guard still has a presence here. You can see right here, oh, Bruce, help me out. The buoy tender ship, the Fur, has been here for quite a while. And we can see that dock right here from this site at the buoy tender, which manages all the buoys clear up to the stake, or including the snake.
Well, no, there's a smaller buoy tender in Portland that goes up.
Okay.
In Portland, but it actually does the coast. It goes up into Puget Sound and down to the California coast and some of the offshore aids as well.
Again, real nice calm weather every day. Yeah. So what a history here, and we're very honored and proud to be able to have this site. I know Mark had mentioned. I just want to kind of wrap it up, and are you going to speak about Keith in a little bit? Okay. So when I came out here looking for a site to put this site, I want to remind all of you that the campsite was not right here. This wasn't even here then. This was river then, 200 years ago. But I want locals and visitors alike, please, I'm going to ask that you respect that site out there. It is federal restricted land, and I'm going to ask that not only you, but please pass that on to people interested in the story. This is why we place this away, so we can view the area, but not impinge on the site itself. And let's pass that respect on, of respecting the Job Corps, the Coast Guard, to not go out there and fiddle around a little bit, but just enjoy the story. But when I brought Scott Tucker, the superintendent of Lewis and Clark National Historical Park, out and showed him the site, Mark and I come out a little bit later, and and I thought, wow, what a perfect site. Right along the river, and then I thought of another amazing person that a lot of us have the honor and privilege to know. And I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, this project is really an extension of the work of a visionary, lifelong conservationist who was our past president, Lewis and Clark Trail Heritage Foundation, Oregon chapter past president for 12 years, Keith Hay. And Keith was actually involved in Lewis and Clark and conservation for about 50 years throughout his lifetime. He passed away in 2013. In 1962, he was involved, he began doing planning and an inventory of sites along the Lewis and Clark Trail on behalf of the Department of the Interior, and they published a plan in, I believe, 1966, which eventually led to the creation of the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. And so in honor of Keith, where we've installed this bench, and really thanks to Tom for that idea. I have also a letter from Keith's daughter. They weren't able to make it, but I want you to hear what she said. She said, Jennifer says, "My dad would have so thoroughly appreciated this upcoming tribute that I don't doubt he is aware of it now. His passion for the Lewis and Clark experience ran so very deep that he worried about the work he still had to do while he was in the emergency room. These words, 'But what about my Lewis and Clark work?' were his last complete sentence. Please extend the deepest thanks from our family for honoring my father for what was his most abiding interest." And with that, I'd like to have Lynn and Mary come help unveil the
Before we unveil, I'm one of the photographers, and I just ask everybody to bunch in closer so you can see better and you'll be better in the photo. Come and get close.
Group
as we do.
photo.
Yeah, just come on close so you can see what's going on.
Come on, oh, you want him in there?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to be close so you can see it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And-
come on around this way too. if you can't
Lynn
see it
and Mary are on our board. Lynn was instrumental in all of the grant writing that we did and organizing things, and just really helped us out a lot.
And braving some more terrible weather coming out, checking
Yes.
the sites
This
out.
is really a nice day
This is a
compared to
nice
the day
day.
they brought me out before when it rained 5 inches.
So, if you and Mary would unveil the bench while Tom and I take care of the sign.
Countdown.
1, 2, 3.
Go! Ta-da! Great joy in camp, bench in view.
Now, if anyone has any questions, I'm sure we can answer them.
I want to ask Jonah something. Jonah, you mentioned, I just thought how beautiful this, and when you sit on this bench, you're not going to want to come except for the weather. What kind of wood is this, Jonah?
It's a Purple Heart.
Purple heart. Purple heart. I knew it had, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is.
And I'll tell you, his Jonah and Matt and the crew and Angela, the work that they put in, it got in yesterday morning, perfect, and really appreciate all the help.
Is that weathering steel?
Pardon?
Is that weathering steel? Steel?
Is it a weathering steel?
Yeah, so it'll slowly be kind of turning orange with the elements out here. Is that right?
I have no idea.
Anybody else want to share anything about? Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
this book, written by Keith Hay, is available at the Fort Clatsop bookstore, and the proceeds for this go to the Oregon chapter and the Washington chapter for projects like this. So if anybody hasn't got this book, I recommend it. It's great for identifying paddling sites, and there you go.
So I think it'd be great to identify and honor current and past board members of the Oregon chapter. Let me see if I can catch people. Tom Wilson, Mark Johnson, Lynn Trainer, Mary Johnson, Bill Patrick. Who else do we have here? My Ted K. So thank you all. I have some membership applications for the chapter if you're interested in some of our bookmarks, and a few copies of the map that we produced, Lewis and Clark on the Columbia River. I also want to say one other thing. I want to compliment Sea Reach Limited, which is the interpretive panel company that created this panel during the bicentennial and just before the bicentennial. They helped us in Oregon install 30 panels up and down the Columbia River and in the Willamette River area, and this is yet another panel that they've produced consistent with their great work, and I think you'll appreciate the history that it shares.
And now that you brought that up, Ted, I like Mark came up with this title, and it's so appropriate: Hunger, Separation, and Misery. Point William, because I failed to mention the third name at that point, named after William Clark. They knew information about there because they're hoping to see a ship over there. So they knew Cape Disappointment, but they hadn't paid attention to this side and didn't have the information that this was named already, and they had named it Point William after William Clark, and so that's why you see the Point William here in relationship to the course day here. I have all the journal entries. If you diehard geeks like me and Mark and the others around here, I've got a few extra copies if you wanna look through those. But we greatly thank you and appreciate you for coming out, and for those, our partners, once again, Diane, thank you so much. I have Keith's on my tablet, on my phone, everywhere. One of the best pictures of Keith is in a Clatsop cedar basket hat. When we met down with the Bash family and Dragonfly down at the estuary, and Dick and Roberta placed the basket hat on Keith, and it was just like form fit. It was just so perfect. And that's just Mark has a picture of it here, a small picture.
Yeah.
I know he really, really liked that picture.
Before we conclude, Mark, would you make a pitch for membership in our chapter?
You bet. We do have annual membership for families at $15, and we do approximately monthly events, and we have membership applications here, and there's a great newsletter that Ted publishes for us.
And individual membership is $10 a year, a huge cost
Yes.
that I think if you're interested you can manage. So,
I also wanted to say that the images here, the artwork was by the late Roger Cook, who did much of the artwork on the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial. And here's the picture of Keith, if you want to pass that around.
When the native presidents at Tongue Point too, we show a plank house here. On Tongue Point itself, it's not known that there was a plank house, but the journals say there was an abandoned hut, which indicates, and I've talked to Diane, I've talked to Dick Bash and the tribe, and I see that, and of course, all of us know how you can interpret the journals, but to me that, it was a seasonal place, and so the present was certainly strong, as before, during, and after the expedition stay here at Tongue Point. So I think you'll see a lot of different points. The modern map of the expedition, way large map of Tongue Point. You can see how narrow the isthmus. He gives a pretty good description of the isthmus where it connects to the mainland there. So it's a pretty fun story.
well, as we wrap up, can I ask all the people who had a hand in making this panel happen to come up around it so we can take your picture and give you a hand.
Come on, Diane. Where you at? Come on.
Diane, where's
Come on, John.
Josh?
He probably took his little one.
Yeah,
back.
he did.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
You got Diane?
Diane.
Is there more than one?
Yeah. More than one Diane?
Diane. Come on, you stand by your plank house here.
Let's give them all a big hand for making this happen.
Should we point?
Different ways.
They went that way.
And thank you all for
Okay.
coming out.
Thank you.
And come look at the panel.
Yeah, read the